Hello everyone, just Gordon here and welcome back to another Planet Zoo real life inspiration video. No DLC video today. I know it's probably been announced already. I'm recording this pretty far in advance, so I'm not sure. But today is a very special day because it's Eltenen's birthday today. You may remember Eltenen used to be one of the community managers of Planet Zoo and they absolutely loved raccoons. So what better way to celebrate their birthday than with a raccoon video featuring 35 raccoon habitats. I've actually managed to cut it down to about 1 minute per habitat, which I'm really proud of, but still it's going to be a very long video. So strap in, enjoy the raccoons, get up to some mischief, because we are getting started with the first zoo, which is the Aachener Tierpark, and it's already quite a special one to begin with, because this is a mixed species habitat. And while most mixed species habitats for raccoons have skunks in them along with the raccoons, this one has Asian small-clawed otter, and that's why it's a special one. You might remember this from the Asian small-clawed otter video. We can also see the otters walking around there. But yeah, that's pretty cool. There's a couple of climbing frames, a little stream going along the entire habitat, which is really cool. They can get into the trees, the raccoons here, so that's nice. And what's really fun over here about the stream is that it actually comes out of the habitat, goes under the path, and then goes into this other habitat, which I think is for serval or something. So pretty freaking cool right there. Love that. And that's gonna be it for Aachen. So let's move on to the next zoo. This is Almere Jungle. And what's special about this zoo is that it's located right next to Stichting Aap, which is this huge rescue center that takes in all sorts of mammals, mainly focusing on primates, but they also take in a lot of raccoons, which is an invasive species. They get caught in the wilderness here and then they need to be taken somewhere. And often Stichting Aap eventually sends these raccoons to any zoo that is willing to take them, including this one. So all of the raccoons in here are rescued. Actually, I think the other day they got even more raccoons, and my favorite one over here is one of them is called Huppelepup, which is the best name ever. But yeah, the enclosure has been changed slightly to facilitate even more raccoons, but yeah, this is it when I saw it last year or something like that. So yeah, pretty nice habitat, a couple of nice climbing frames. Also really interesting, there's this button which activates some bubble things. Not sure what that's about, but it's a feature. So yeah, that's it for Almere Jungle over here. So let's move on to the next zoo. This is Anholter Schweiz, which is a kind of wild park in Germany, and they've got very similar enclosures all over the place, but for all sorts of animals. So over here's the raccoon enclosure, and we got this shelter building with the green roof. Got a little pond. You see that a lot for raccoons. I of course absolutely love that. There's this indoor area where you can view them indoors. Yeah, this is very common, as we will see more habitats of this zoo. And we also saw the badgers, of course, they had a very similar setup to this. But yeah, the raccoons do have some more like climbing frames and stuff compared to that. And yeah, it's a pretty nice habitat over here, I would say. Definitely would look better when things are more lush, but that's just the way it is. Anyway, next up we have AquaZoo Leeuwarden, the old habitat. Yeah, we have two habitats to look at from this zoo because they recently opened a new one. But yeah, this was the old habitat. Pretty nice, lush, forested habitat with a bit of water in the front that actually streams across. They've got some perches and things to sit on. You can go all the way around. The back of the habitat is this mesh thing with some anti-climbing at the top. All nice and green, kind of blends in pretty well. You'll notice why I'm pointing that out in a moment. There's this indoor viewing over here from which you can see the animals and also see this raccoon which had called a magpie. Very, very nice right there. And then this over here is the new habitat. So again, we do have kind of this stream that's coming out of the beaver habitat and going into the raccoon habitat. We've got a similar indoor viewing, just a bit more modern and clean looking. And we've got these spikes over here in front of a wall, which makes me think that they used to not want to have a wall there, but for some reason that was not possible. I can definitely tell that this company, Libema, which owns several zoos across the Netherlands, has really discovered this rusty wall type material, because they are starting to use it in all sorts of places across all their parks, and it's kind of becoming a little bit obvious, I will say. I definitely prefer the old habitat with just the mesh and the green anti-climbing stuff in the back. That looked a lot more naturalistic, but still a really nice looking habitat. Can't wait for the foliage to really settle in there. But anyway, next up we have Artis, and we've got this beautiful lush habitat up against this kind of historical building over here. Yeah, just a really nice classical habitat. There's a bit of a dry mode in front. But yeah, it's super lush at times. Pretty much all the times I visited it was like this, so I'm not sure if they ever trimmed that down a lot. But you really gotta work for it. You gotta search these raccoons up pretty nicely. And yeah, this is also a mixed habitat with the skunk. Actually, several of the enclosures we just saw are. But yeah, this one is just really nice. You can see that big plank over there that gets put down across the moat for the keepers to get in. And while that is happening, the raccoons are also super curious in getting up to the moat like they are doing right now. So yeah, really fun right there. But yeah, let's move from Artis to Artisklas, which is a little volunteer-run zoo. Somewhat close-ish to Artis, actually. I'm not sure what the connection is there. But yeah, we've got a very nice little raccoon habitat over here. I love the lushness in the back. I have no idea how that is escape-proofed on the other side of all that foliage. But yeah, we've got this really cool bit of enrichment over here. Just the turning thing with all the holes in it. The raccoons were going crazy for it, just constantly trying to get their stuff. They were also really enjoying the water, taking a bath, washing their food, which is what they do. I'm not sure if you know this, but in Dutch and also in German, we call them washing bears, actually, because yeah, they always wash their food, and that's really cute. But yeah, lovely little habitat over here. Really like this one a lot, even though it's on the small side. It's just very cozy looking in a way. And then there's a little bit of theming as well on the right there with all the tools hanging from the shed. That's just really quite cute. And yeah, that's it for Artisklas. So let's move to BestZoo. This is an older habitat. Currently, at this very moment, it does not house anything. The skunks have moved to a different habitat in the zoo, and the raccoons seem to have disappeared. I'm not sure where they went. But yeah, it was a pretty nice habitat. A little moat around. They had the trees that they could get into, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I quite liked it. I thought it was a decent enclosure. I like how the moat kind of goes into the habitat a little bit over here as well, being kind of a little stream. And it looks like there would also have been maybe a waterfall feature in the back there, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I thought it was a cute enclosure. But let's move on to the next zoo, which is Blijdorp. With Blijdorp, you can find the raccoons almost as the first animal you see as you enter the zoo through the main entrance. You can see here we have the masked burglar. Bet you thought I was going to say bandit there, but no, the burglar. So over here, the enclosure, I love all the little rocks alongside it. They're pretty often can be found around this little area over there on the left, which is really nice because you can get really up close to them. And over here, there's this little house in the middle of the habitat with all sorts of North American theming around. There's a little campsite. This is actually what I never realized. This is kind of part of a mine, because as you zoom in, you can see there's actually some rail tracks going through the grass there into this painting of a mine shaft. Very convincing right there. I never knew this was there. I never noticed this before, but by looking at how overgrown the rail is, it seems like it was there already for a while. So maybe I did notice and I just forgot about it. I don't know, but really nice enclosure. And let's end it by listening to some raccoons. Oh, they're so cute. They were making those sounds last time I was here, and I just had to include it. They are so adorable. But yeah, another thing I really like about this enclosure is if you find the right angle, you can get these really naturalistic looking shots where you don't even see any of the barriers and things like that. I was really happy with that. These were some really nice pieces of footage. But yeah, and next up we have Parc Animalier de Bouillon. And we start off with an indoor view over here where you can look in the indoor area of the raccoon. So we got some climbing logs and some gates into the outdoor part, obviously. And as for the outdoor part, yeah, it's a little bare bones, I will say, but there is some climbing logs, and there is a very small tub, and the raccoons are all kind of chilling in this one corner over here. They don't have that many, so I don't think the enclosure is too small necessarily, but yeah, it is not the best looking one in this video, I suppose. But yeah, that's it for Bouillon. Let's move on to the Zoo of Cologne, where we do have quite a lovely enclosure over here. Just a nice sloping up into the back type of enclosure with a bunch of shelter boxes, which definitely look like they were capturing the raccoons more than anything. I'm not sure, maybe something like that was going on. Who's to tell? Lots of trees over here that I'm pretty sure they are able to access. I don't see any hot wire around them or anything like that, so that's really cool. Also a nice little pool over here. Oh, and it looks like I got distracted by a raccoon moving around in the distance, of course. Can you really blame me? Anyway, one last detail that I think is really cool to point out here, if you hadn't seen it already as we approach the habitat, is these trash cans. They have raccoons on them too, and that's just the most fitting thing in the world, obviously. So next up we have Tierpark Dessau, and this is a really lovely little enclosure, very comparable to other things we've seen with the climbing frames, but again they can actually access some of these trees. There is some kind of umbrella going around the little perches up in the trees that they can't go over, but the best part about this zoo was this raccoon over here. This must be the absolute chunkiest, biggest raccoon I've ever seen, and I loved him so much. I hope he's healthy. That is one concern, but he looked absolutely amazing, so I don't know. Anyway, yeah, this is more of the enclosure, so you can see they do have tons of climbing frames all around. Absolutely lovely, and yeah, really fun little shelter building in there as well. So really cute, really cool. But that is Dessau. Let's move on to Eindhoven Zoo, or Dierenrijk, where we've got a lovely large enclosure over here for the raccoons and skunk. And what I thought was really nice about this zoo is that I could see the raccoons were actually able to get all the way up into the trees, so you can really see them displaying all of their kind of ranges of motion there. Also, kind of peeking around the corner, you could see this backstage area over there, which was really fun. Moving around over here, looks like there used to be some kind of view into the backstage, but it has now been blocked off. There's a second viewing point with this like dock-like structure. You can see a third one over there. But yeah, you can get more views of the enclosure and these barrels that are these shelters for the animals. I really love all those rocks kind of in the water part. It looks so super cool. And what I didn't notice as well is that the water actually flows through this habitat into the beaver habitat behind it, which is really fun as well. But yeah, that was it for Dierenrijk. Let's move on to Bio-Topia Dunkerque, where we've got a netted over enclosure with a nice wooden viewing area, some windows inside where we can see these naturalistic climbing frames, nice little pool in the background. It's super great for some reason, and a raccoon walking around. Who would have thought? There's also a nice staff area over here. We can see the wooden building that makes the indoor area for the raccoons. And there's this stone wall over here, through which we can get to another viewing point with these large windows. Now we're kind of really inside the enclosure almost, feels like. We can also see their backstage area right there. And we can see in a separation area is a tree porcupine. This is a shared enclosure with the raccoons and the tree porcupine. But yeah, at the moment the tree porcupine was being held separately. I'm not sure why. I'm guessing normally they would be in there together. There was education signs for it after all. Next up we've got GaiaZoo with another mixed species enclosure of the raccoon and the skunk. I love all the trees and bushes in the middle of this enclosure. It makes it look really, really nice. There is also a really cool enrichment item over here with the balls inside of that box over there, and they need to really reach in to try to get their treats from there. Really quite fun. And the terrain over here goes down all the way to this little body of water, which connects to some other habitats and aviary. Another enrichment item over here, which was really, really fun to see them use. Yeah, they really got to use all of their skills to get the food from here. It's yeah, the point of enrichment basically. The path continues along over here. We're almost going into a little tunnel, but first we have more views of the enclosure. We can see piles of logs, little bits of shelter close to the ground, but everything looks really nice and naturalistic. And as we move into this kind of overhang space, we've got some more windows, but also a view of the indoor area over here. So you can see what that looks like. There's a feeder, there's some perches, just really nice stuff for them. So that was GaiaZoo. Next up we have Wildpark, Grafenberger, Wald. And we are at the predator building of the zoo, which is a small circular building with indoor areas for a bunch of different predator mammals like ferrets, wildcat, foxes, and the raccoon as well. So over here we can see the indoor area of the raccoon. Again, just some small logs, perches, a little swing like playground element right there. That's pretty fun. As we go to the other side, this is their enclosure. I love all the little pebbles around the water feature. The big tree over there is blocked off by some hot wire, so they cannot climb that all the way, but there are some other climbing frames all around for them to use. A little hut over there with a plank going up into it. Yeah, I think that's a really cute little enclosure over here. It's quite nice. But that was it, so let's move on to the next one, which is going to be the Zoo of Hannover. And we are in the North America area, which is probably my favorite area of Hannover, to be honest. And we've just left a little mine shaft cave type area, and we're greeted right away by this really open raccoon enclosure right here. It has some really interesting fencing in the background, which we'll get to in a second. But first, let's go over here to this train station type area. It's mainly for the reindeer on the other side, but there is also this viewing point of the raccoons. You can see hot wire all around to prevent them from escaping. But yeah, it's got this nice little perch into the enclosure, and if you turn back, then yeah, you will get some nice views. So the enclosure has several levels to it, and they can climb all of the trees and stuff inside all they wish. I love the little barrels and bits of shelter underneath that overhang right there. That's really cute and well done. And then these fences over here are like pipes going over top and then with fencing underneath. I think it looks really, really interesting and neat. It's quite a nice bit of theming right there. Yeah, I think it's really cool. So that was it. Next up, we have Harry Malter, which is another shared enclosure with the skunk, as you can quite clearly see. And this enclosure also has a bit of a stream going through it, which is quite nice. I will say this side of the enclosure could probably do with a bit more climbing. There is a nice climbing frame on the other side over there though, so it's not that they're without it, but most of the enclosure looks a little bit bare. But yeah, what you can see over here is an albino skunk, which is pretty interesting right there. And yeah, you can get pretty close up to the raccoons in here. And if you're wondering about all these raccoon skunk mixes, don't worry. According to this zoo, the raccoons have gas masks, so everything is fine. Anyway, next up, this is Dierenpark Hoenderdaell. This is another zoo that I know took in a lot of raccoons from Stichting Aap, giving them this really big enclosure over here. We have some similar elements to other zoos that we've seen, like the little house in the middle, but also lots of other inspiring things. I really love the detailing around the stream here with the little water wheel, the small boat next to it. Another detail I really like is the feeding bowls kind of integrated into the picnic bench so that the raccoons will be sitting on top of the picnic bench, kind of eating from it. I think that's a really cute detail right there. So yeah, overall really nice enclosure here. Let's move to the next one. This is Tiergehege Kaisergarten in Oberhausen. This is a free zoo that you can just go to. It's in like this public park, and you can just go inside and hang out with all the different animals, and the raccoons are part of it over here. They've got a pretty nice little enclosure, very low fencing. You can actually really easily get up to the raccoons, which were super curious about my little camera, so I had a great time here hanging out with them. As you can see over here, they have the most boopable snoots. I really had to contain myself not to touch them, because this was just the most adorable thing ever. And yeah, there was also this cool little viewing point over here where you can crawl inside and really get up close with the raccoons. Especially fun for kids, of course, who actually fit in there. But yeah, just an overview of the enclosure right there. It's really cute. I like it. And let's move on to the next one. That's going to be Kasteelpark Born, where we see a lot of the same elements that we've seen a bunch of times already at this point. Climbing frames, a little pool in the middle, barrels as shelter, a nice treehouse for them to enjoy. I think the trees in this zoo are accessible to them, so they can actually climb up there. There were these little swing things that they put some food on, so it's a little bit more challenging for them to get it. So that's a nice bit of enrichment right there as well. Yeah, just a really fun, nice, spacious, actually quite spacious enclosure right there. The next up we have another Wildpark. This is Luneberger Heide. Slightly smaller enclosure to some of the others we've seen, but a very nice climbing frame over here in the middle. And we can see an albino raccoon actually in one of those shelters, so that was pretty fun. But yeah, that's that's all I had to show there. Speaking of albino raccoons, we are in Zoo Maubeuge, where we have a lovely large enclosure as well. It's this big pit with this awesome rock wall in the back, many different tiers and verticality for the raccoons. There's some trees to climb. There's so many climbing frames all around. I really think this is a great enclosure. I really enjoyed visiting it. The raccoons were also all over the place, super active, so it was a lot of fun to watch them. They had quite a lot of them, and yeah, like I mentioned, there was also an albino raccoon running around. You could see it for a split second. But yeah, look at the climbing frame, there's so much. And then this tree in the front, they were all here and looking at me. I don't know why I was so interested in them, but I very much appreciate it. Thank you so much. They were all super adorable. But yeah, I mentioned the albino raccoon, but that is not the only cool thing about this enclosure, because this is a mixed enclosure with raccoons and koali, which you can see over here. Really fun that we have kind of the South American version of the raccoon in here as well. I thought that was really fun, and yeah, nice little mix right there, really special. So next up we have Monde Sauvage, where we have this giant log out of nowhere. It looks really good, it's really well made. It just feels so out of place because it's just in the middle of the forest. And here there's not a lot of theming in the zoo, so it's really weird to kind of just have this out in there. And then the enclosure around it does not really match that same level of theming. It's just this big metal cage. It's nice and spacious for sure, but it looks a little odd. This is a weird conglomeration of different ideas, it feels like. Also, what's interesting is inside of the log is another hole that has the raccoons in there, and there is also a small building to the side of it as well, which I think contains their backstage, their like proper backstage. And if we go to the other side, we can look inside there a little bit. I'm not sure if this is specifically for the raccoons or if it's also for the binturong, which is here as well, and yeah, or also the skunks, of course, which are in that enclosure as well. But yeah, anyway, next up we have Natuurhulpcentrum Opglabbeek. This is a rescue, so don't expect something too fancy. It's just a very big metal cage. Lots of verticality here. I definitely do want to commend that. But yeah, being a rescue, it's just getting something that is as good as possible with whatever budget they have, and this is the result of that. It's not made to look nice, it's just made to be good for the animals. Anyway, next up, Zoo Osnabrück. Another really interesting mix here. This is a mix between raccoon and European mink. When I visited, the mink were not in the enclosure temporarily, but it is also built for them. We can see anti-climbing on the tree, so they can't go too high into them, but there are lots of climbing frames all around. Again, many different levels over here as well. So many climbing frames. I really like this enclosure a lot as well. I love the water feature, which we kind of skip past it, but we'll have another look at it as we pass around the enclosure a second time, because we can view this enclosure from different levels. There's also this bridge that we're going on right now. On the right we could see the entrance of the keepers, which is this kind of mesh cage, and making sure the raccoons can't get out. Yeah, here you can see that water feature. So there is some stream coming from the upper level flowing into that lower level with the water right there. Looks really cool. So yeah, love that enclosure. Next up we have Pairi Daiza. We're moving up to the enclosure right here, which is in between these elevated boardwalks that we're currently walking past. So let's move up the boardwalks and go to the enclosure. A cool thing that you can see all around are these logs with the raccoons kind of carved into them. They look super cute. The enclosure itself isn't the most pretty looking. It's kind of just this empty box. There are some trees and lots of climbing frames all around, so no big complaints welfare wise. It's just not the best looking enclosure in my opinion. I love this little bit of enrichment over here. You can see there's a seesaw that they can put some food into, or you know, the raccoons can go in there almost all the way. But yeah, I just love seeing how many different kinds of enrichment items there are for these animals. Something I also really like about this enclosure is how these climbing frames are kind of at the same level as the visitors. So if the raccoons do decide to climb up there, you will be kind of at eye level with them. So that's really nice. There's also these sheltered climbing spots, and we can see down there is a skunk. So this is also a mixed species enclosure with the raccoons and the skunk. yeah, very, very common mix, like I said. So this enclosure is also part of the resort of Pairi Daiza, so if you're sleeping here, you can actually go here during the night. The footage I have of that is pitch black, so it's not worth much, but it was so cool too. You couldn't see anything in the enclosure, it was pitch black, but you could hear the raccoons and the skunks kind of skittering around, so that was really, really interesting and a super cool experience. So yeah, really cool about Pairi Daiza. Next up, we have TerraZoo Rheinberg. This is a small reptile house that also has some other stuff in the back, including this raccoon enclosure. There is not much to see here. It's this big mesh thing. There is glass at the bottom, so if they're walking around the bottom, you can see them quite nicely there. But yeah, if they're up in the climbing frames, of course, it's a bit more difficult to see them. So that's just the way it is, I guess. I don't know. There's not much else to say about this enclosure, really. There's not too much interesting going on. So let's move on to the next one, which is Tierpark Fauna. They've got a pretty nice large cage as well. Again, mesh, so it's quite hard to see through it, especially with filming. But yeah, we've got this pool over here with this bright blue color. Not the most naturalistic looking, but there is some cool elements to this enclosure that I do really like and want to share with you guys. First of all, the bits of shelter. There's this log that has a hole in it for the raccoons to go inside of, so that is really cute. But the best bit of shelter here is, of course, a trash can. I can't believe this is one of the first zoos that we've seen that actually has trash can shelter for the raccoons. It seems like a no-brainer almost, but yeah. Pretty fun right there. But the best part of this zoo is that it is actually allowed to feed the raccoons as long as you get some special food from the kitchen. You are allowed to give it to them through the mesh. There is a little sign saying like at your own risk, like they might, yeah, be careful, they might bite you. But yeah, they are super excited and grabbing the food with their little hands. It's so freaking cute. Yeah, I had to try it. Of course, I had to do it because it was just the best thing ever. I saw some people feeding them not the raccoon specific food, so I was like, I'm gonna do this the right way. And they do it really nicely. Like if you buy the raccoon food, you don't get that much to prevent the raccoons from, you know, getting too much food. Control how much food the raccoons are getting, as long as people stick to the rules, of course. Anyway, you could see very clearly when they noticed that I no longer had any food, and they lost interest. Anyway, time for my favorite enclosure in the entire video. Welcome to Wildlands and their area Nordica, where we have this big sawmill. We already saw it in the beaver video pretty recently, but on the other side of the beaver enclosure is the Raccoon Creek, which is the raccoon habitat. And yeah, part of the sawmill is also viewing of the raccoons. We can see some education over here about the raccoons and the skunk, and over here we have a view into the enclosure. So take it in because it's so freaking cool. Of course, we are in a sawmill, so it makes sense that there are all of these logs strewn about in the water, which is where they would kind of be like transported via the river or something. But it creates this super interesting terrain for the raccoons to traverse. But that's not the best part. The best part is the indoor area. So beware of the skunks. Also just really cool signage and theming all throughout here. But yeah, over here is the indoor area of the animals. It is an office. They have taken over this building, and it's just the absolute coolest thing ever. There's so much detail in the calendars, the props all around. The cabinet is their little things. There's this sign over here, John, will you please fix the window? There's been another raccoon in here. I just love all of those details so much. Here we got a raccoon kind of picking a fight with a skunk. Probably shouldn't be doing that, but yeah. So cool. The only thing that I'm wondering about is if it's really that good for the animals, especially when I saw this raccoon was just kind of snagging on this phone wire. I'm not sure how well they made it so that this entire environment is 100% safe for the animals. So that is my only complaint. If they can solve that, or if they can assure me that that is the case, that there's nothing wrong with what I just saw, and then also snacking on all these other bags and things like that, then it's the best thing in the world, because I love it so much. Seeing them in there, it just makes true to their name, just a little masked menace over there. Super awesome. And then over here on the outside of the sawmill is more viewing of the outdoor enclosure, where you can see all of those logs. It's just so cool. And one thing that is worth mentioning here is that the skunks are sadly no longer in this enclosure, and the reason being that raccoons are pretty messy eaters, so they drop a lot of food on the ground, and the skunks were eating all of it and just getting too fat basically, so that's why they had to take them out. But yeah, and next up is Dierenpark Zie-Zoo, where again we just have a very simple enclosure over here. Again, we have an albino raccoon though, that's pretty neat. But yeah, we got some hot wire around the quite low fence, make sure they can't get out, and then some climbing frames in the middle, some barrels, little hut, yeah, some nice foliage all around, but nothing too spectacular here. Simple pool over there, some rocks around, but yeah, nice simple enclosure. And let's move to the next one, which is the Zonnegloed, another rescue. And we're starting off in a little indoor area where we can see the raccoon kind of chilling in this box type thing. Some climbing frames all around. There's a TV playing some informational videos about the raccoons in here. And as we move along the hallway, there is another window with another room, similar climbing structures and perches and those similar boxes all around. Pretty nice. Then as we move to the outdoor enclosure, got a nice little overhang in these glass viewing areas. Yeah, it is a meshed over enclosure, but there's foliage all throughout and also over top. Looks quite nice. And what's interesting is that there is some education here about Stichting Aap. I've already mentioned them a couple of times. Yeah, apparently the raccoons here were also taken from there, which is just really cool to see that international collaboration giving these animals a nice home right there. So yeah, also a nice pool, climbing frames, the whole shebang. Love to see it, right? So almost the final zoo of the video. I think this is the last northern raccoon that we're looking at today at Zoom Erlebniswelt, where we've got a beautiful naturalistic enclosure, super spacious and really awesome looking. We've got a kind of creek over here in the front with the raccoons wading through it. It was a pretty hot day, so I guess they were looking for some refreshment. But yeah, tons of foliage, bushes, trees, everything all throughout. It's a really lovely looking enclosure, and it kind of just blends into the landscape here pretty well. We've got these faux rock viewing areas as well. Over here you can kind of see the hard edge of the moat over there where it's made escape proof with some hot wire. But yeah, you do still get some really nice views over here anyway. As we keep moving along as well, we have a really cool feature, which is that there is some stepping stones through some water which is connected to the creek. And this is what I mentioned in AquaZoo as well. Like, it is possible to have a barrier with those kind of spiky things and some hot wire to have an opening into the enclosure without them being able to escape. So that is a possibility still. Anyway, next up we are in Zooparc Overloon, and this is the old enclosure of the crab-eating raccoon. Different kind of species of raccoon, but I thought I'd throw it in anyway because it's a really awesome enclosure, especially this one. You can see there was just this moat going around, but still some fencing there because of course raccoon can swim and get around. But yeah, just look at this and how it blends into the landscape. This was such a beautiful enclosure. I loved it so much. Sadly, it had to make way for the new clouded leopard enclosure, which I'm sure is also going to be really nice. But man, this space will be missed because this was probably my favorite enclosure in the entire zoo. I loved it so much. My favorite memory of it was during one of the evening walks. I was allowed to feed the raccoon over here. So over here I'm throwing a quill into the enclosure, and the crab-eating raccoon was immediately interested, so they were exploring and checking out what I had just thrown into their enclosure right there. And yeah, this is a crab-eating raccoon, if you've never seen one before. And it's like a raccoon, but a little less floofy and looking even more like a criminal somehow. It's the way I would describe them. They're pretty cool, right? Look at him. He's looking for the food that I just gave him. He was not in the water stir. But yeah, eventually he did find it, but I guess he was too intimidated to check it out. So off he went. But yeah, that's crab-eating raccoon, old enclosure. Loved it so much. And now let's have a look at the new enclosure. And if you remember the new enclosure of the raccoons in AquaZoo, and this is built by the same company. Yeah, it's a very similar vibe, right? It's a little bit different. AquaZoo has a different layout, but again we've got these rusty metal walls all around, which just looks so much less naturalistic and less open as the previous enclosure. We do have similar climbing frames that all still looks really quite nice, but yeah, it's just not the same. I just really love the old enclosure quite a lot better. So that's just my slight critique. They do have a nice little water feature in the front here. We can see them kind of moving around. Look at the nuts on that guy. Sorry, that just caught my eye. My god. But yeah, that was it for Zooparc Overloon, the new enclosure. It's not bad, but I prefer the old one. That's all. But that's gonna be it for this video. Those were 35 different raccoon enclosures. Hope you enjoyed, hope you got some raccoon inspiration. Go wish a happy birthday to Altenon in the comments, and I will see you all in the next real life inspiration video, probably about some of the new DLC animals, because I'm pretty sure by the time this video goes live it should have been announced, if not almost coming out already. So we'll see then. See you, bye bye!